What is up, everybody? We are quad boxing the week one live reactions like YouTube TV here. We're going to be giving you guys a little bit of breakdown, a little bit college football breakdown, a little Devy breakdown, a little player breakdown, and then we're going to have Jeff breakdown about his Buckeyes. So we have a little bit of all above. So we're going to hit the intro, hit that like button, and we'll catch you guys on the other side. All right, let's talk Shedeur Sanders. I heard he's quarterback one now. That's what I keep hearing now. He above Caleb, above Drake, above all these guys. Colorado came out and blasted TCU. Not really necessarily blasted, but definitely there as a 21-point underdog or 20.5-point underdog and coming out with a win. It was pretty good there. What do we take away with Shedeur? Christian, we'll go to you. You're a QB guru. That's what everybody calls you on Twitter. So what do you think of Shedeur? What is your takeaway from this? Are you putting him in? Like, I'll be honest, my big board's coming out pretty soon. I don't have him in the top 36. It'll be out tomorrow. It was obviously before this game, but I still wouldn't put him necessarily in the top 36 yet. Where are you at with him?
Yeah, I wouldn't put him in the top 36 yet. I think Shedeur did a fantastic job commanding that offense, but I also think that offense was schemed up as perfectly as you possibly can against a TCU defense that really wasn't prepared for that. A lot of his throws were just to wide open receivers. He wasn't really putting balls into tight windows. He wasn't, going through a ton of reads. He hit his check down a lot, which was, part of the plan. And I think that's a thing that he does very well. But I think, from an NFL perspective, I think that there's certainly some things that he'll need to work on. Mechanically, I don't see. He's very much so an over-the-top thrower instead of a rotational thrower. And we see all NFL quarterbacks have kind of transitioned to rotational throwing. But for the Colorado offense and what they are trying to do, I think that he's going to be a fantastic quarterback for them moving forward. 510 yards is insane. The best Colorado quarterback performance that we've seen in a very, very long time. So I don't want to discredit what he did, but I also think I saw a take today that he's going first overall instead of Caleb Williams. And it was a serious one. And so that's not going to happen, but I'm excited for the kid. I'm excited to watch him play this year.
Did you watch the game, Jeff? I don't know what games you watched today.
I did watch the Colorado game. I watched that game, yes, and I agree. I mean, I agree with everything that Christian said. I think that his poise was big. Certainly, he has escapability. He was able to hit throws downfield. I mean, they just miss. I mean, realistically, there were a couple of plays there where Colorado could have ran away with this game. The way that they played, the emotion that they played with, and they just missed a couple of big plays downfield. But then at the same time, when they needed to make those big plays downfield, they were able to do that. And so I think that that's what he brought to it. I think that you see the moment wasn't too big, and that was one of the biggest takeaways. And you can talk about the technical things, and I think Christian does a fantastic job at that. But coming into that situation, the emotion tied into it, your dad is the coach. You're playing against a team that played in the national championship game on their field, and you go out there and you win the game that way. I mean, those are all the things, like, that's what the storybook is. And so I think there are certain intangibles that are involved. I mean, we see it. We all wrote Brock Purdy off. We see him now as a starting NFL quarterback. So I don't know that you can write Shedeur off transitioning into the NFL. And certainly if he does make that step, he's got things in his game that would translate well to the game that we play in fantasy football. But I was very impressed by their performance today. The big takeaway, of course, I think is Travis Hunter, because, that guy's a top 10 pick, if not a top 5 pick. And they're just really taking the time down until he can go to the NFL.
How dare you bring up Brock Purdy on this show? We have to bring him up on the Dynasty show. We do not need to bring him up here. Like, I hate that name. But no, I get your point there. Do we? Let's see. Let's go to Jay. Jay's an analytical guy, right? I don't know if he's had time to put the numbers into spreadsheets yet, but Travis Hunter, do you think he's going to play corner or wide receiver? Where are you going? Hot take.
Oh, I don't know about that, but I did have a chance to look at Shedeur Sanders, some of his numbers. And there's a guy on Twitter, Tej FB Analytics. He ran the numbers really quickly on Shedeur Sanders. So this game that he had, it was 10.17 yards per play. His EPA was a 35.22, which worked out to an EPA per play of 0.68, which is absolutely crazy. Now, you have to do this over a full season. This is just one game where he put it 510 yards or whatever, 4 touchdowns. I think he had minus 32 rush yards for sacks. I think those were, but this is an incredible game. Caleb Williams was able to put up like a 0.6 or something his first year, and that's a full year. So 0.68 in one game, like really, really great. But what we need to do is we need to see that over the full year. And really what we're looking for over a full year is something like 0.4 on EPA per play. Travis Hunter looked awesome. It's really cool to watch him. I haven't run the numbers particularly on him, but I did want to call out one other player in this game, which is Jimmy Horn Jr. He had over 100 yards receiving. It was 117 yards receiving on 11 receptions and 1 touchdown. So Travis Hunter was the guy that everybody talked about. He played both ways. It was really fun. Jimmy Horn Jr., Joe Horn's son, who we've talked about a couple of times in some of our sleeper picks, he looked like a really good option there for Shedeur Sanders as well. So I'd call out him as well.
Yeah, we talked about, I think, on when we did the Pac-12 sleepers. It's funny we don't have a Pac-12 anymore after this year, but we had the Pac-12 sleepers last, and we did talk about Horn. Hunter is an interesting one. I still think I don't know. I think he might do a little bit of both, which is crazy to think about at the NFL level. But I feel like he still projects as a cornerback. Like I don't know. I do think he'll play on that. He had 11 catches. Dylan Edwards is someone that we should probably shout out. Like he looked really good today. Explosive running back. He had 5 catches, 135 yards and 3 touchdowns. And he just looked explosive there. And I think if Colorado wants to be really good, they need him to kind of step up too in that backfield there. Any other takeaways from Colorado?
Trey Sanders looked pretty good on TCU side, so that was encouraging to see.
Yeah, he looked good. The Colorado thing, I think this is an exciting win. This was an easy game to get up for. I'm curious to see what the rest of the season looks like for them, because I do think that this could bottom out at some point. So I don't want to take away anything. My hot take is that I don't like Deion Sanders all that much, and like him calling out reporters after the game. I'm not a huge fan of it. Like, yeah, man, their job isn't really to hype you up. Their job is to write about the team. So I don't know. I kind of, and I'm getting killed on Twitter, so I'm going to be rooting against
Shocked.
Yeah.
Christian's getting killed. I'm also poking that fire a little bit, so I like to.
You did.
I like to poke. I like to poke the fire. It's fun on there to be like, yeah, why do you hate Colorado and Deion so much? I will say this. I actually think Nebraska plus 1.5 is a fun bet next week. I'll be like a little bit of a letdown week after what they did. But hey, yeah, I mean, that's there. Let's get to what we're really here to talk about. Ohio State, do they suck? So question mark, giant question mark. Here are the numbers, and then we'll let Jeff talk about a little bit. Kyle McCord won the battle, and I won in quotation marks. I don't know. Like, I still think Devin Brown's pretty talented. 20 for 33, 239 yards, an interception. Chip Trainum, 8 carries, 57 yards. Travion Henderson, 12 for 47. I know Christian will talk about the offensive line. It definitely needs time to gel. I think that's when we did our preview of Ohio State. That was one of our big things. I said that offensive line's got to get better. Marvin Harrison Jr., 2 catches, 18 yards. If I was him, I would sit the rest of the year out and just hang out, man. Go to Jamar Chase route. I don't think you need to do that. On the flip end, their defense is really good. Like, I think their defense is better than it's been in a long time. So that is a positive. So what do you think, Jeff? Ohio State homer, and then Jay's Ohio State homer as well. What do we think about this roster?
I think roster talent, I don't have a question about the roster talent, to be honest with you. I think a lot of what I'm seeing, the reaction to it, I think is incredibly overblown. And I'm curious, I question if people actually watch the game, judging from a lot of the takes I've seen on Twitter. I saw people that were like, oh, you're not going to get any production from Marvin Harrison Jr. in college fantasy this year because the quarterbacks aren't capable of getting him the ball. I mean, I don't know. I didn't see that at all. He had a touchdown that was called back because he stepped the foot on the line. He had one other one that just missed. I thought Kyle McCord made big level throws. I think Kyle McCord has a fantastic arm, and coaching's awful. I genuinely don't understand what coaching staff is doing. I think last year, the entire year, the offense was not in rhythm because they had this in their head that they had to get physical and they had to run the ball to beat Michigan. And the entire year is a build up to beat Michigan. And so we're in 3rd and 2. We got to run the ball to beat Michigan. And then they get to Michigan handles them in that situation. You watch college football. You've spent one Saturday watching college football. Who is lining up consistently and running the ball on 3rd and 2? Ohio State has been stuffed in more 3rd and short situations than any team in America the last year. So who's doing this? This is not how college football is played right now. You have all these talent at wide receiver. You see it every day. You see teams are spreading teams out on 3rd and 2. They're throwing these short little bubble. We saw it a lot with Colorado this afternoon, where they got in short yardage situations. They swung the running back out. They did those types of plays where they got a guy in space, and it's next to impossible for the college defenders to bring a guy in space and stop him from getting 2 yards. You'd run a guy into the back of the offensive line and allow one linebacker to shoot a gap and blow it up. I generally don't know what they're doing, because last year they were out of rhythm the entire year because they kept doing this over and over again. They got their whatever packed in against Michigan, and then they get into that Georgia game and they say our season's already over, let's hang loose and let's throw it out there. They had a wide receiver playing running back for them against Georgia, and they almost won the national championship just letting it hang out. And so you would think you'd learn one thing from last year. Hey, maybe we don't do that again. No, they do it again. And so I have never been more concerned with Ryan Day as head coach. I just don't see this team winning at a high level with him as coach. It's just not there. And so, got Brian Hartline sitting right behind him, and he's the hottest assistant coach in America right now. And you get Deion Sanders out in Colorado. You've got Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin, I think, knows how to win some big games. And so I don't know. I mean, it's all coaching to me, and I don't have any questions or concerns about the talent on the roster. I mean, I think this is one of the most talented teams in America. I just don't understand what you were doing, and you were not putting Kyle McCord in a situation to succeed.
What do you think, Jay? Where's our level-headed Ohio State fan?
Yeah. So I think Ryan Day is an excellent coach at making NFL players. But is he a great coach at winning the big game, the Michigan game, and game planning and those types of things? I'm not sure yet, but he is very good at developing players and putting people in the NFL. Some of my takeaways here, I would mention during the game, Kyle McCord did hit Marvin Harrison in the end zone. It was called back because Marvin Harrison got pushed out of bounds and he didn't re-engage before he caught that touchdown. So there was this one throw that Kyle McCord made to Marvin Harrison Jr. for a touchdown. It was like 30 yards or something like that. And it looked really nice too. So that's something that's on the that we saw.
No, we don't do context.
We
don't do context. No, it's a zero.
Well, he had Julian Fleming. I don't know why you have Julian Fleming as the go guy and you don't throwing it at all to Emeka Buka. I mean, yeah. I don't know. That's coaching again.
Sorry, Jay. Go ahead.
The other thing I'd mention a few other things I'd mention is the rushing game. I think is more of a 3-headed monster as opposed to all TreVeyon Henderson. TreVeyon Henderson played the majority in the first half. He only had 12 carries for 47 yards, but they actually like spread out the carries. So Chip Trainum is the guy that came over from Arizona State and transferred. They had him play linebacker first, then they converted him because they needed the depth. So they converted him back to running back, and now he's playing running back. He looks like a monster out there. He's a pretty big guy. And then you have, of course, Mayan Williams, who is a breaker of tackles quite a bit, and he punched the ball in for 2 touchdowns. So that running backfield, those carries seem to be more split and more even than I was expecting coming into that game. Where I was sort of expecting the ball to go to TreVeyon for quite a bit, and then they ran a lot of 2 tight end sets, which I thought was pretty interesting. Cade Stover had a pretty good game. Now, I don't know about his athletic ability and being sort of that NFL prospect, but it seems like he's going to be putting up stats this year. But interestingly enough, G. Scott Jr. was in the game quite a bit, and they were playing that two tight end set. And it was pretty interesting. They converted a 4th down by swinging out to G. Scott Jr. And he had some nice blocks too. So that's something that interesting, like a watch item, just having those 2 tight end sets in there. The other thing I'd mention for defense, it does look like it's a much improved defense. But one of the things that I noticed last year was getting pressure on the quarterback. We've got some really high-end pass rushers in JTT and Jack Sawyer, and even Kenyatta Jackson. And really, it doesn't seem like we're getting the sacks. We're getting some pressures, maybe not as many as I'd like to see, but they're not converting into those sacks. And I think when Ohio State is at its best, it's when we're getting pressure on the quarterback and we're able to, kind of help out sort of our defensive backfield and all those things. So I think these guys, JTT and Jack Sawyer and Kenyatta Jackson, they're five. I don't, maybe not exactly 5-star, but these are high end guys, and it just really would be awesome if we can start converting some of those pressures into sacks and really help out the defense there.
Yeah. Offensive line was a problem today. I know like Jeff's not super concerned about the roster and its talent, but they ran a duo to the left, and like a good offensive lineman sees the linebacker shooting the gap and just even bumps him to the left. It cost Travion Henderson probably a big run because the rest of it was well blocked on that particular play. But those excuse me, those little things that happen on an offensive line happened frequently today where like they couldn't get push in the run game. Kyle McCord had decent pockets, and I think that's something to note. Kyle McCord looked fine. I think there's a big overreaction saying, oh, we need to see Devin Brown. I saw someone replied to me today and said we need to see Lincoln Kinehals. It's no, like Kyle McCord clearly won that battle for a reason. They put Devin Brown in for 3 snaps and they ran the ball 3 times, including a QB run. Doing design quarterback runs with Kyle McCord from the 6-yard line or whatever it was, that's the type of stuff that makes me think like they're never going to win those big games. I'm Penn State's playing right now. I don't know how this Ohio State team even beats them. And I know they're not winning by a lot against West Virginia, but just looking at the two teams and how they operate, it blows my mind. Jay mentioned the 2 tight end set thing. Why are you have the best wide receiver core that has ever been put together, arguably. Why are you running 2 tight end sets and trying to get this run game going? I understand like in those big games, you need to be able to run the ball. But let me tell you what, if you throw the ball and you give your quarterback some confidence, I think you're going to be set up later in the season to run the ball because you have a guy like Travion Henderson, who is a fantastic running back when you've got things going well. So I don't know, man. I tweeted out, people are really mad at me today. I said, I don't think Ryan Day makes it out of this season because you can't lose to Michigan 3 years in a row and survive that. And I just don't know if in watching those 2 games, Michigan is so far ahead of where Ohio State is. And I've never said that. Even last year, I thought Ohio State was primed to win that game. You can tell the difference in the 2 programs in terms of their ideologies and how they're kind of running things, despite Ohio State still having better talent. I don't know. I'm not excited to go to work this week because I know people are going to be really upset about the Ohio State game.
Gotta give a shout out to my guy Harbaugh. We're here with you. We got 3 more. Thank you. No, I think to your point about Michigan, we have an identity and we just stick to it. And that's Harbaugh. This is what we're going to do. And we're going. I feel like Ryan Day has struggled with that identity throughout his tenure at Ohio State. And Jeff made a comment, and I was going to pull it up, but I'm not going to be mean. But he said, like, they were worried about Stroud last year after Notre Dame game. McCord's not Stroud. Like, Stroud is a very talented quarterback, I think.
Yes. No, you're right. They're not the same guy.
Yeah, you get a little bit jazzed up, Jeff. And so I was just like, I think that's why they're leaning on the rushing attack. But again, if their offensive line's not good and they're going to struggle there, and I think maybe that's why they're running 2 tight ends more. Maybe they're just trying to go that bully, help that offensive line, get that rushing attack in. The biggest thing for me is they need to get a Mecca the damn ball. Like that kid is a stud, and they did not do that. And Julian Fleming's got it. What is going on? Like I do not understand. Julian's got to have pictures of something. Like there is some reason why that kid is still out there as much as he is. But I think Emeka's there. I'm not worried about Ohio State. I think they're fine. They're still Ohio State. They got 5-star dudes everywhere, and that defense being better is going to help them. All right. Any other takes there, or we want to move on to another game?
True freshman Carnell Tate caught 1 ball, and he almost pulled out another one.
Yeah, he looked good.
Should have been 2.
No, it's Ohio State, but then they have spirit animals. They've got Mayan Williams and Julian Fleming are like the tryhards that they feel like they have to get involved. And it's like, let's get Mayan the touchdown. And that backfield needs to be Henderson and Trianum, and that's it. And just play those 2 guys and get ahead enough. Ryan Williams can be that kind of that closer if you're up by 4 touchdowns, but any carries that if you're not in that situation that are not going to Henderson or to Tip Trianum, it's just a waste of possession. And the same thing with targets that are going to Julian Fleming and then that are not going to Tate or not going to some of these other players on the roster.
Yeah, I mean, this week too for games it wasn't very good games going on out there. So let's get into some players. Let's talk about Caleb. You guys want to talk about Caleb? His game's over. Caleb Williams' game is over early. The game's not over, but he is done playing. Caleb looked absolutely phenomenal, and he looked phenomenal last week. Does you think so? When you're looking at the overall box score, he was 18 for 24 for 319 yards and 5 touchdowns. He also had 3 carries for 42 yards. So when we're thinking of this, like, is this going to quiet down Drake May as quarterback 1, Christian, or are we still going to see it out there?
I just saw it. It's no, I didn't see it. And it's a lot of people are saying, well, it's whatever flavor of quarterback you want. They're both good. No, it's not. It's not whatever flavor of quarterback you want. Caleb Williams is the best player in the country by a wide margin. I just don't know how you watch what he does and then you like flip on a Patrick Mahomes highlight and you're like, oh, those two things look similar. Maybe someone's better than this kid in college football. Stop doing that. I don't get it. I love Drake May. I think he's got a lot of promise. I think there are a few other quarterbacks that I think could be starters at the NFL level. There are a lot of quarterbacks. We're kind of in a quarterback age right now. Michael Penix Jr. had freaking 4 touchdowns in the first half today. Like, it was remarkable. But do you see Caleb running around back there and then just like jumping and throwing, he's jumping out of bounds and he's throwing just absolute dots with touch down the field, or he's scrambling around the pocket and then he fires just laser beams to the front of the end zone. Like, I just don't understand how you can watch what that kid does. And there was one, the announcers actually noted it. There was one play where he just stood in the pocket and he went through all of his progressions. And it was, someone was like, that's the best play he's ever made. It's not, but also like, that's what you want to see from him. I think you're going to see it in spurts so that like he has that on film and people can say, look, he can do it. He can stand in the pocket, but man, just ridiculous player, just an insanely good player.
Anybody else on Caleb?
Yeah, I think oftentimes when we're trying to be analytical about things, you want to try to remove emotion from it. But I think that there's some value in bringing some level of emotion into it and saying that if you are cheering hard against Caleb Williams or against a Patrick Mahomes, and does that guy terrify you every single time he's touching the ball? And is it one of those things that even if you get them into a 3rd and 15 situation, in your gut, you still feel like he's going to convert that first down just somehow? That's what Caleb Williams brings to the position. And if you're feeling it sitting at home, those guys in that stadium are feeling it on the opposite sideline as well. And so, and I think that just dictates so much of the games right now. And you look at Ohio State having a flat performance. Michigan looked good, but the team that beat Michigan last year and in their season got upset against Colorado. You look at Georgia, kind of had a lackluster start, and it's feeling like this season's wide open, and maybe that USC defense will be bad enough that it can cost them the season. But right now, I don't know that there's a better bet for the national championship than USC and Caleb Williams.
When we did our preview for USC, me and Christian said that you had to have a Vince Young type year. Like we said, hey, he's going to have a Vince Young, Cam Newton type year for USC to go to the playoff and possibly win it. He's doing that right now. Now it's early. He's played Nevada and San Jose State. And he does definitely have like the back end of that schedule is tough. I think one underrated storyline for the day was that the Pac-12 has like some of the best teams in the country. And this is it for them. Like, and now it's going to implode. Like it's over after this. So one last hurrah for there. But yeah, I think so too. Jay, where would you put Caleb Williams if you had to rank him in dynasty quarterbacks right now? Don't look at your spreadsheets off the top of your head. Do not look at those spreadsheets. I saw you looking Google Sheets over there.
Probably somewhere like where Justin Fields and Trevor Lawrence are, maybe a little bit above that.
Ooh.
But below like a Justin Herbert, Lamar Jackson range. But I know you guys would probably be a little bit higher than that. But I think the thing about Caleb is, looking at the stats over the past 2 years, he's perfect. It's absolutely perfect. I do these like composite scores where I sort of grade out each of the years and stuff like that. and it's really looks really great from a numbers perspective. I think the only thing I knock him for, and this is kind of silly, is like he's 1 inch too short, but that it really doesn't mean anything. We're not talking about Bryce Young here. This guy's 6'1". Yeah, I would just be hoping for 1 extra inch, and I just knocked him a tiny little bit for that. And relative to Drake May, I have Caleb Williams at like a 0.97. I have Drake May at a 0.89. So there's a little bit of difference. I still think Drake May's like the second best quarterback in that class. But I do think there's enough of a difference where there'd almost be, if you're going to lump those two in the same tier, I'd still put Caleb like in like a tier 0 above Drake May. So yeah, I think right now he's a top 10 dynasty quarterback on the NFL side too. So that's
Christian, real quick, before I lose this thought, I need you to go make a graphic right now with Jay's face and say, I was just hoping for that extra inch, and that's it. That's all I want on it. And
I knew that was coming. I knew it was coming. I wanted to know actually too. So Jay, you're spot on. You in our combined ranks, you have him at QB 10. So he said he's top 10, and I know it's probably been a while. I have him up at QB 6, and we have him as a consensus dynasty or top 10 dynasty quarterback right now in our combined rankings on the Patreon.
Yeah. I mean, that's where he's at. And then we just did a dynasty show for Football Guys, our regular show during the week. And we did a talk about like, what would you need to trade for a top pick? Cause we did a Caleb Williams breakdown. So if you want to look for trades, you can go find that as well. Anytime I can plug any of us, we're going to do that. But yeah, we did a whole deep dive into that. Okay. Other quarterbacks. So we talked about Drake, we talked about Caleb's. JJ McCarthy had a pretty good game today. He looked better. That's kind of Jay's guy, which I like because I don't have to be the homer on the show for JJ McCarthy because I know he likes him. We talked about Shedeur already. Jackson Dart from the ashes is back. 4 touchdowns, over 300 yards. Bo Nix was out there. He had a really good game as well. We talked about Michael Penix Jr. Where do you see the QB 3 to 5 range, Jay? Like, where are you looking at that? Like, who comes next?
Yeah, I like JJ. I think JJ. I've been plugging in the numbers over the summer, and it's just kind of shocking to me why people were off him, because all the numbers actually do look pretty good for especially for last year. And I think this first game really proves out a lot of that, because he was able to show some really good things in this first game, which is kind of interesting because I know a lot of people are sort of out on him because of his maybe accuracy, especially in the deep ball accuracy. Mm-hmm. But accuracy and showing up for big games, so his accuracy in big games. But if you look at all of his numbers on a whole, in total, they look actually really good. Even his like adjusted completion numbers from that perspective do look good. So you kind of have to really like break it into parts to find out those weaknesses on his game. But in total, he meets a lot of those numbers. So I'm hoping and I'm thinking that one of the things I screen for is sort of these younger QBs. So I want the guys that come out early, and he's part of that group. The Caleb Williams, Drake May, JJ McCarthy, Quinn Ewers. There may be a few other guys that can fit into that category. And then he would be at that top of that list underneath the Caleb Williams and Drake May. So he'd be my QB3. The difference between him and Ewers is sort of, Ewers came in as a very high profile guy, but JJ McCarthy has actually put up the numbers and all these metrics that we're looking at, QBR, EPA per play, adjusted yards per attempt, rush yards, market share. JJ McCarthy is hitting a good chunk of those. Quinn Ewers hasn't put up the numbers yet to justify where he's at. And so that's why I can give it the edge to JJ, because he's shown what he can do on the field. Mm-hmm. In that young cohort. That's kind of how I think about those things. Now, that's not to say this is one game that we've seen 1 week. Now we're going to go a full season of these stuff. So those numbers will change a lot over this last year. And I'm not saying Quinn doesn't come back and have a great season and bump above him. But from what I saw from last year's numbers into this year, I'm not sure why we're sleeping on JJ. And I think this week's game was another notch in the JJ belt there.
You hear that, Jeff? JJ.
No, I agree. I like him quite a bit. I think that physical tools and I think one of the things that I think we need to look at the NFL level and see these young quarterbacks that are either succeeding or not succeeding. And you look at he who can't be mentioned, played a lot of football before he took over in San Francisco. You look at the guys that are maybe struggling a little bit. Trey Lance did not play football. Justin Fields didn't play a lot of college football. He had that one season. He had 1.5 seasons at Ohio State. And so I think that we look at for athletic traits and we look for measurables and we look for who's got the statistical numbers and like that's all well and good. But I think also analyzing who's really succeeding at the next level and who's doing it quickly. I keep circling Michael Penix Jr. because that's a guy that and he's been through a lot. He's seen a lot. He's played a lot of football. I mean, he was at that Indiana team, that 2020 Indiana team that he had Indiana as the second best team in the Big Ten that 2020 season. And all that he's gone through now to get to this point, the way that he played today against Boise State, and the way that his season's stacking up with the wide receivers in Washington, that's a guy that I keep circling. And I think that it's easy to dismiss for whatever reason it might be, but he's going to be very, very experienced. He's certainly got the arm to attack vertically and to attack downfield. And so those are two things that I think are going to translate very well. And so that is the one thing that I keep coming around on, but I love JJ and I don't understand. I don't know. I'm not as into it as you guys are, and I don't see it all on Twitter like you guys do. And so a fade on a guy, like, I don't know. It's funny to me of like, well, I see a guy that's got prototype athleticism, prototype size, has played high-level football, is coming out of a blue blood program. Like, what's there not to like? And so it's just funny to me.
JJ is my QB3 too, based on film analysis. So like the film also matches the numbers. It's just I think a lot of people stopped watching Michigan last year or thought that for whatever reason they just went this heavy run stuff, and they do, and that's kind of their brand. But when you come back around and you kind of just like separate the passing plays from that, JJ was really good down the stretch last year. Now the TCU game is a little a little up and down. He was the reason that they were in that game. He was also the reason that they were down in that game. But I think with another full year, I talked about it on my week 1 preview this week. Like, I think he's right there behind Drake May. Like, I don't actually think that there's a huge gap between Drake May and JJ based on film. JJ is actually mechanically more buttoned up than Drake May. I also am watching Drake May right now, and I can say I think he's going to be one of those guys that the mechanics don't matter a whole lot because he's got such a big arm and he kind of makes up for that. But man, JJ's right there at QB3. You mentioned Michael Penix Jr. though, and I do want to touch on him. I think a lot of teams are still worried about like the injuries and all the stuff that he was facing. But when you just watch him like place balls to opposite hashes, it's insane. Like arguably the most precise passer in college football. And I don't know how the NFL is going to value that. He's left-handed, so they're probably going to say, "Oh, we can't do that." But Tua's molding that for NFL teams and how they can run an offense with a left-handed quarterback. So, like I said, quarterback golden age right now. There's so many. Bo Nix is a guy we haven't even mentioned. Went off today. Oregon scored 81 points. So it feels like this could be a good year where maybe we do get 4 or 5 quarterbacks in the first round, potentially.
Go ahead, Jeff. I can tell you.
Yeah, just a no on I think that like a guy like Drake May, and I think that we feel set in stone on like this guy's gonna be the sure quarterback too. But if you rewind it 2 years ago, who are the top 2 quarterbacks in Devy? You had Spencer Rattler and Sam Howell were going into that 2021 season. Everybody was convinced that these are the 2 guys, and we saw kind of Rattler's taking a circumference journey around to even try to get there. And he's playing well tonight, but they're not putting points up on the board. And then Howell's finally looks poised to arrive there, but he went in the 5th round. And so I think Caleb Williams is there. I mean, Caleb Williams is, as the children say, him, but at the same time, I feel good about Marvin Harrison Jr. But if you're out there tanking right now in a dynasty or anything like that, I'd be real cautious about where some of these things could end up or where they could go. But just make sure you get Caleb or make sure you get Marvin Harrison Jr. Don't mess around.
We are TDR after dark right now with him references, and we got everything going on. Yeah, I hear you though. I think that is always like they're going to be debating these guys as you go through. But again, let's talk about the running backs, because is this another bad year for running backs, or are we starting to get worried yet? So we did have a question in the Patreon, so I want to make sure we answer that. So question for the show: Malucci matched Braylon Allen's. So Ches Malucci matched Braylon Allen's production on less carries tonight, and he did. The Wisconsin running back. Malucci came back from an injury. Are we excited for Braylon or just terrible Buffalo D? Are we worried that he's not even the running back one on his own team? So let's just kind of touch on Braylon Allen. I know film wise, we had some questions going into Braylon this year, and we said he could have a big year, and I think he's gonna have a big year. But is there an argument for is him and Ches are closer than what people realize, Christian?
Yeah, I think so. Fellow football guys, staffer Daniel Harms put out a Malusi is greater than Allen tweet today. It got people riled up. But Ches Malusi had a breakaway run where oh, that's an athlete. Braylon Allen is kind of pegged as this insane athlete because he was squatting a ton and he came into college football at 17 and he had a pro ready or a college ready, physique and things like that. But when you watch the two of them play, Braylon Allen doesn't have that breakaway speed. And there are certainly a lot of good things about his game. I think, from a patience perspective, I think that was definitely there today, much more than it was last year. But when I looked at his film last year, he was a day 3 player. Ches Malusi might also be a day 3 player, but that's just kind of speaking to the nature of running backs right now. I would not bank on Braylon Allen becoming a top 100 pick just based on being in a committee and not always looking like the best one on your team. That tends to hurt guys, right? I mean, you look back to last year with even Zach Evans. Zach Evans had some good run last year. He was good on film, and that didn't matter to teams. He fell super far in the draft. So I'm not saying Braylon Allen is going to do that, but I'm saying I think we're going to see Ches Malusi a lot more than what we expected to heading into the season. And I think that could be good for his draft stock, and I think that could kind of hurt Braylon Allen's.
He had a 90-yard run. So, I'm cautious on out producing because you take away that 90-yard run. And, yeah, he had the 90-yard run.
Okay, we're not doing that. We're not taking
12
away
rushes for 68 yards versus another guy that had 141 yards without the 98-yard. I'm just saying. And Braylon Allen did catch 7 balls today. So I don't know.
That's fair.
I'm hesitant to and that's the big thing. If Allen shows that all year long, if Allen's catching 5, 6, 7 balls all year long, and at the end of the year, that stat sheet's going to look real nice in the receiving department. And you look at that size, and then I think he is going to test okay. And so that is just a factor. But you see a guy like Dameon Pierce, who certainly was a day 3 pick and has steamed up in Dynasty. And so, again, I'm hesitant to write anybody off, but I hear you. I mean, Malusi's a good football player.
Is Braylon Allen fancy Zach Charbonnet?
Or fancy Dameon Pierce? I don't know.
Fancy AJ Dillon, maybe?
I would say no, because Braylon Allen is 19 years old still.
Here we go. Here we go.
When he gets
him to rush
when he's drafted, he'll be 20 years old. He'll have 3 years in the league.
Fair.
Charbs had to take a year where he had a transfer year. So, I'd say probably not. And then from an age adjusted perspective, Braylon Allen's hit on yards per team play, rush yards over expected per attempts, dominator rating, receptions, market share. He's hitting in both his first year and his second year. So from a numbers perspective, the guy basically hits. He's young. He meets the height, weight threshold, speed thresholds. He breaks a lot of tackles. So I can see where you compare him to somebody else on your team, but everything in the numbers tells me that this is a pretty good player. He has over 2,500 yards in 2 years, 23 TDs. His yards after contact is 1,500 over 2 years. He has 30 targets and 21 receptions. So he's involved in the passing game enough to meet thresholds from that perspective. So everything you look for in successful NFL running backs, he's showing you, especially and he's doing it early, and he'll be young when he goes into the NFL. So I still think there's something here that NFL teams will covet. And really all it comes down to draft capital. And I agree with your sentiment on Zach Evans being outperformed, but there's other things going on with Zach Evans too, like transfers and moving teams and those types of things. And Malusi may be pretty good. I believe last year Malusi was injured for the entire season, so we didn't get to see that, or maybe that was 2 years ago.
No, it was last
but
year.
Braylon Allen, when he's been playing for his first 2 years, has been pretty good, and I'm okay with if you're going to run up the stat sheet and both of these guys perform really well. I'm okay with that. I still think NFL teams will probably covet this guy. But again, we got to see him do it for the third year and get over those age-adjusted metrics for those things.
Yeah, I mean, so let's go through the running backs. Trayvon Henderson, we talked about earlier, average today, pedestrian. I know, what does that offensive line look like? Raheem Sanders is a biggin. He's at what, 243 now, 242. Like he and I don't know if I like that much weight on Raheem. I'll be honest, like seeing him as big as he was. Kendall Milton, obviously, we're seeing him. Marshawn Lloyd, we've talked about Lloyd on the show. We talked about when we did USC. He looked pretty good. Bucky Irving, I like Bucky, man. Bucky might be that guy for me this year. Like I like Bucky a little going into the season. He had a big run today. Audric Estime from Notre Dame. Michigan duo. Nottingham Edwards didn't have a great game today. Blake Corum came back. Are we down? Are we down on these? Is this a case where we may be seeing running backs go like at the 108, 109 if it stays like this, Christian?
Yeah, I think so for sure. Because I think, even projecting forward, I think I'm starting to get nervous about Trayvon Henderson. I think that he was good when he was, given an ability to get to the line of scrimmage today, and that footwork and the things that make Trayvon good were still there. It's just, are we going to see that production, and then does that hinder the draft capital? I think, especially with the nature of how the NFL is treating running backs right now, I find it really difficult to believe that we have a first-round pick from this group. And if we don't have a first-round pick from this group, I think we're going to see a lot of guys outside of the top 50 too. I'm glad you mentioned Kendall Milton. He looked good, only 9 carries today. Georgia really struggled to get it going in that first half. I think it was 17-0 at halftime. And then that's kind of pretty much when Kendall Milton was done for the day. So I'm excited to see what he does leading that Georgia backfield, because he's got a lot of those traits that you look for as well. It seems like one of those years where we're going to get some like smaller school guys that vault up towards the end of the season or during the draft process. But I definitely think with the strength of the wide receiver class, and I think that there are certainly guys to talk about in that group as well, but the strength of the wide receiver class mixed with having an elite tight end that's probably going to go in your top 5, or should go in your top 5 in my opinion. And then you've also got a plethora of quarterbacks, hopefully, that you're taking. I don't think that we're going to see a running back until I think 107, 108 maybe, but even 110 through 112 might be the move. Just with the nature of it. Now, if Braylon Allen does go out there and become a top 50 pick or something, and Jay mentioned that he's 20 years old, you have a little bit longer length of time that you can keep an asset like that in Dynasty. But I don't know, man. I'm feeling pretty rough about this running back class after today.
Yeah, Jeff hates running backs, right, Jeff? Like you hate all running backs in every format.
No, I mean, if a guy's active and can get the ball, I love him. But other than that, I'm just not going to have the pricey ones on my team.
Yeah. So like when you're looking at this, I do think that when we're talking about these guys, Bucky's a guy that I would watch. Bucky's a guy that I think is fun. I think he's value. There's some other guys out there, but yeah, to Christian's credit, it could be some smaller school guys out there. Jace McClellan, I have to mention Jace every time because his mother hates me. So Jace McClellan looked good today. He had a touchdown. He was solid. So shout out mom. Looked good there. Let's just go to the wide receivers really quick. I do think there's some value here, and then we'll talk about some overall Devy performances, and we're going to give you some game picks. I hope you guys are ready to pick 3 games that we haven't seen yet. So we got Marvin Harrison Jr., Xavier Worthy, Troy Franklin, Roman Dunze. There's some other guys in that 24 class. Malik Neighbors hasn't played yet. He'll play tomorrow. So there's some other guys that haven't gone there. Obviously, we saw Harrison not look very good today. I know he almost had a touchdown, just like we almost tried to get rid of a 90-yard touchdown run. Xavier Worthy did look good. Xavier, I thought that he played okay. Texas looked all right there. Xavier's put on a little muscle. this year. I wouldn't say like it's like, but it's there. Like you see him, and they said he's 170 now, but like you can tell he's at least bulked up a little bit, which I think is good for him. I'm going to keep saying that Troy Franklin is the most underrated wide receiver in this class. I've been saying that for 3 years. Rome looked good. Jalen McMillan looked really good. Those guys all look good. Me and Jay talked to you guys about Polk when we did the Pac-12 sleevers. I said I really like Polk going in. They look good there. Any takeaways, Jay, for you for any of these wide receivers?
Yeah, like the big disappointment today is that the Ohio State wide receivers, because those guys are sort of like in a tier of their own. I think Xavier Worthy there is probably pretty close to that, but yeah, just something's got to happen at Ohio State to get this passing game going, and we gotta. I'm not sure if Kyle McCord can support the type of seasons we want to see from Marvin Harrison and Emeka Egbuka. I hope it's there, and but that'd be one thing. There's a lot of receivers that still have yet to play. One guy I'm really interested in is Keon Coleman at Florida State, Malik Neighbors at LSU. So I want to see how those guys play. But I guess the big takeaway for me is, Marvin Harrison, Emeka Egbuka, I think are in that very, very elite tier of wide receivers. Those guys that are kind of like first round locks, the ones that we think about when we talk about fantasy football and wanting to get in on those guys. And my hope is that it's not a disappointing season for them. My hope is that it gets turned around and they can start putting up some catches and some numbers. I did call out the Jimmy Horn Jr. from Colorado. I think that's something that's interesting. One other guy that's interesting is Dorian Singer at USC. I'm not sure about the stat line this week, but last week it seemed like he had a pretty decent game. So that'd be one guy that I'd be thinking about here as well. Oh, and Malachi Corley, I think he got injured this week. So that'd be another one. I think that was a guy on a bunch of guys' radars. Somebody that was a big yak guy. And a lot of people's sleeper favorite wide receiver, and he did get injured today. So something else to keep an eye on there.
Dorian Singer, 2 catches for 37 yards right now. So not a huge game, but they spread it out. And looking that up, Deuce Robinson, 71-yard touchdown catch. You love to see it. Those two true freshmen at USC, just insane. 2024 receivers, Troy Franklin is vastly underrated right now and needs to not be, I think. I think that we're going to get to a point where we're going to have Jalen McMillan versus Rome Odunze discussions and things like that. This is a really, really good wide receiver class. I think when we talk about the reason why these running backs are down, it's going to be because we're drafting 7 wide receivers in the first round and 8 wide receivers. So,
Jeff, you got anything with those guys?
Well, a couple other guys that I don't know if they're at Devy or not, but Trey Harris from Ole Miss, and he had 4 touchdowns today. Transfer from Louisiana Tech. He was the leading receiver for Louisiana Tech. He's a physical guy, good size. We saw 2 wide receivers out of that Ole Miss program make it to the NFL this year, Malik Heath and Jonathan Mingo, looking to follow in their footsteps. You guys, I love Roman Wilson. He had 3 touchdowns today, and I think that that's an explosive athlete that I don't know if he's a Devy or not, but he probably should be. And then Smith is having a good game too, and that's a guy that I think and you guys know me that I pay attention to. If Ole Miss is turning out NFL wide receivers after NFL wide receivers, then the next guy that's producing at Ole Miss, I'm probably gonna pay a little bit of attention to him.
That's a nice comment, Jay. Yeah, Jay is a genius, it feels like. Jay just does math better than us. Well, maybe not Jeff. Well, actually, if you listen to our Dynasty show, definitely better than all 3 of us. When we couldn't figure out what ADP was when it was divided by 12. But yeah, so yeah, I agree with you there. Other Devy performances that I do definitely want to shout out. Zachariah Branch looks like, he's a stud. USC wide receiver. He's wide receiver 1. Jackson Arnold. Me and Christian have been touting Jackson Arnold probably since last November, and we've been getting some shade from other people out there that don't follow us. And he looked good today. 12 for 12. Really kind of hit things and looked good. Drew Aller, I don't know. Right now he's in the middle of his game as a halftime, but he had a big throw to our guy, Keandre Lambert-Smith. Yes, I like it. So, yeah, I think it was like I don't know. What was 60 yard touchdown, somewhere in there?
Something like that, maybe 70.
70.
Something.
Yeah, and someone, we talked about it in all offseason. We said the three comfortable quarterbacks we're comfortable drafting in Devy: Aller, May, and Williams. Like those three guys for us were like the holy trinity, and it looks like that is where you're comfortable with. And as much as we like these other guys, you just don't know. Jaden Ott, give him a good shout out, Jaden Ott. It looked like people were kind of off of him a little bit with the transfers that came, but he had 20 carries, 188 yards, and 2 touchdowns again. And Ott was a guy last year that we talked about and that I kind of highlighted on the YouTube channel. And then Evan Stewart, Evan Stewart, everybody knows my affection for Evan Stewart. I love Evan Stewart. He had a touchdown again today. The Texas A&M offense it's a work in progress. It definitely is in there. So, but if they can kind of get that going, Connor Weigman and those guys, they seem like they have a good connection there. You got to give a shout out there. Any takeaways from these guys before we get into picks, Christian? Or anybody else, if you have somebody.
Keandre Lambert-Smith, 4 catches, 123 yards, and 2 touchdowns as we're speaking. So
CFB.
On the brand. That's our brand pick right there because we're very high on that guy.
I think he's got traits that could put him into day 2. And he's an older prospect, but day 2 is where they kind of don't care as much about that stuff. So, no, I mean, everyone. It felt like everyone played well today, and that's probably because every matchup is pretty rough. And we do need to put a little context onto that. One guy I wanted to mention, Jaden Gibson from Oklahoma too, had 2 massive contested catches. Just insane. He mossed the dude on the one, and then the touchdown throw from Jackson Arnold actually was also a bit of a moss. It kind of got tipped up, and then he just grabbed it from behind the defender. So someone to watch. He's not creating a lot of separation, so that I like when my wide receivers are wide open and not having to do that stuff, but it's always fun to see the highlight catches as well.
Texas State is just putting it on Baylor. Did you see this?
No, they are.
42-24. TJ Finley.
I'm glad. You know why?
300 yards and 3 touchdowns.
We did a Baylor video, and none of them showed up for their team. So you guys deserve that, Baylor fans. Like, you did not come and view that video, so that's exactly what you get. Like,
TJ Finley at Texas State, Auburn transfer.
TJ's still there.
Real
quick, I had to look up the stat line because the game's still going. Evan Stewart had 8 catches, 115 yards, and 2 touchdowns. He's good. Evan Stewart is pretty damn good out there as a quarterback. All right, those are our guys to kind of watch. Obviously, like Christian said, some of these games are a little but we will go over. So before we make our game picks, I do have a big board coming, so I will definitely talk about that next week. You guys can roast me, and we'll kind of talk about where I missed and where that goes for. Any little thing before we get into the game picks and we get out of here. Anything else? Any highlights, thoughts? Well, besides the games.
I'll get one more for you at wide receiver that I missed. You mentioned Evan Stewart, Luther Burden. The game didn't happen today. It happened prior to today. Luther Burden, 7 receptions, 96 yards, 1 touchdown. He was also rushing the ball. He was returning kicks, returning punts. The comp generally is like a Debo Samuel type of guy, but the guy gets a lot of yak. In terms of the 2025 wide receiver class, that looks really good. That class looks awesome. So we talked a little bit about 24 wide receivers being good. 2025 wide receivers for me looks really, really good as well.
Yeah. I wanted to say Debo, but you got it out there. I don't know who the hell Mekhi Muse is from Georgia, but you had a game, Mekhi. Brock Bowers. We didn't talk about tight ends; they don't matter. But Brock's pretty good. He had a pretty good game, rushing touchdown.
JT Sanders too.
JD did have a good game there too. Adonai Mitchell, is that Adonai, right? Adonai. Adonai. He doesn't like to be called. He doesn't want to be called AD anymore. He gets mad. Yeah. So Adonai Mitchell. He could be our biggest riser there. Let's go through some picks. So let's talk about the 3 games that we haven't seen yet. We'll keep track of this, probably not, but we'll try. Oregon State -16 versus San Jose State. Where you going? Me. Shit, I'm first. I'm going to take Oregon State -16. I love Damian Martinez. DJU comeback season. Jeff, where you at?
I'm going to take San Jose State just because they had the game last week. And they got housed in that game, but they've already seen some live bullets. And Chevin Cordero, I think that they keep it close.
I also think it's close, so I'll take them to cover. Or Oregon State's going to win, of course, but San Jose State to cover.
We have DJU playing quarterback, and
Yeah.
Okay, I'm sending this clip to his mom now, so that another mom hates us.
Jay,
You're muted. Oh my God, rookie mistake, Jay.
What did you go with, Kevin?
I went with Oregon State.
Oh, okay. I was trying to see if I can play a little gamesmanship here and be the only guy going the other way. Yeah, I'll go with you, Kevin. I'll go with Oregon State.
Okay. All right. LSU at Florida State seems to be the big game. Everybody's talking about this game. It's really the only game I really cared about this entire weekend, to be honest with you. So that's tomorrow, -2 for LSU. And it's not at Florida State. It's going to be a neutral site game. Where are you going, Jeff?
as a general rule, I take the SEC to beat the ACC, so I will go with LSU.
Ooh, hater.
I think Florida State has more firepower on offense, which it's kind of crazy to say that, but I think this Florida State team is going to give LSU's defense some problems. So Florida State.
Where are you going, Jay?
Generally, I'd agree with Jeff in picking the SEC teams, but I'm going to go with Florida State. I think this is a Florida State year. It feels like it's all kind of lining up for them, and they brought in a lot of guys. I think it'll be a pretty interesting offense for them. And Trey Benson, he had an outstanding second year. If he has another good third year here, watch out. That guy could change games for you. And so I think there's a lot of playmakers on Florida State. I think this will be a good season for Florida State, and so I'm going to take him.
Sorry, I just saw this comment. Sorry, Jeff.
I'm not.
You're smart.
I think for me, I'm actually gonna go Florida State as well, and it's because Mason Smith is he got suspended, and he shouldn't have got suspended, but he did get suspended. I think that leaves a big hole there, and I do think Jaden Daniels. I think I want him not to do good because I want Garrett Nussmeier to play this year. That's kind of my take on that one. All right, last one: Clemson at Duke. Where are we going, Christian? This is your quarterbacks right here.
What's the line?
-13. So Clemson is -13.
Clemson. I do want to mention, we talked about the 2024 class of quarterbacks. Riley Leonard is firmly in that discussion. Cade Klubnik is firmly in the 2025 discussion as we enter this season. Riley Leonard can have a statement game and go out and put numbers up against Clemson, and it probably still is not going to matter. After watching TCU play, that offense was slow. Garrett Riley is now in Clemson. I think that Clemson offense is going to be a lot of fun to watch for the first time since, I don't know. I don't remember the last time it was fun to watch. It's just a bunch of crap is what it's been for the last 4 years. So I think that rejuvenation into the offense would give it to Clemson.
All right. Where are you going, Jay?
I'm going to go Clemson as well. You heard this from me over and over again all summer. Every time we were picking like sleepers or picking between players, I was like, Cade Klubnik, I really like him. I think he could be really good, and nobody knows about him. Will Shipley, actually his numbers look pretty decent. Antonio Williams, another great Clemson wide receiver, sort of plays more of a slot, and they have weapons. Clemson does, with Adam Randall and some other guys. I think this Clemson offense, and I've listened to you guys for a while. I know what you guys were talking about last year with Clemson. I think this Clemson offense is going to look a lot different this year, and I think this could be a good year for them. So yeah, going Clemson.
I think the reason why the TCU lost today is because they didn't have Riley as their offensive coordinator anymore. I think I think Riley matters that much, and I think Clemson's I think Clemson rolls by 21.
Well, half their team went to the NFL too. That was probably a big factor. But I want to be forever the hater and pick, but I'm going to take Clemson. So I'll go Clemson.
Okay, I want you to tell me, since you just took a shot at me, name me everybody got drafted to the NFL from TCU.
Darius Davis, Quentin Johnston, Max Dugan. D. Mercado did not get drafted. Kenry Miller got drafted. I think D. Waters maybe got drafted. I think Waters. EB that got drafted.
Winters. I don't know if he got drafted though. That's only 5 dudes. Come on, don't be taking a shot at me. This is the math thing. Half would have been 12. All right, so appreciate you guys. Any last takes before we get out of here?
Fire Ryan Day.
Fire Ryan Day.
Oh,
Hardball, this one's for you. I can't wait till you're back. Hit that like and subscribe button before we get out of here. We love just hanging out here on Saturday. And again, join our Patreon, talk to us, get our Discord. Jay just dropped all of his analytical stuff in there for the 24 class to get you guys prepared. Christian just did an update on his rankings. I am in the process of doing an update on mine because I definitely need to, because my Dynasty lead's going to yell at me if I don't get my Dynasty rankings done. So I'm in the process of that too. So we'll be diving in, and we'll be trying to come every Saturday for you guys. We have a collective 8 kids among us here in the show, so it never. We'll see if that happens. Christian's got 0, but we'll see how that breaks down. So appreciate you guys. We'll gotta check you guys next week.